Hello and welcome to Africa Today. I am Esther Mokwariola. From an unprecedented annulment to opposition boycott and low voter turnout, Africa has been a witness to recent weeks of political twists and turns in Kenya, where democratic movements continue to trail the democratic process. With Kenyans at their most polarized state in a decade, rerun voting in parts of the country got off to a chaotic start as trademarks of anxiety, tension, violence ensured that the East African nation remained on the spotlight. And so we ask, what are your thoughts on the political development in Kenya following the just concluded rerun presidential election in the country? You can join the conversation and share your thoughts with us on Twitter at TVC News NG. We take a report now, and Africa Today will continue. Welcome on board.
Kenyans woke up on Friday to reflect on their nation's presidential election rerun, with early estimates of the turnout at below 35%, dealing a blow to President Uhuru Kenyatta's hopes for a decisive second-term mandate. With nearly all followers of opposition leader Raila Odinga heeding the veterans' call for a boycott, Kenyatta's victory is not in question. Less clear is his ability to unite the East African nation, whose deep ethnic divisions have been exposed during the bloody and controversial election process and multiple court cases in the past 3 months. Residents who spoke to the media in the opposition stronghold of Kisumu questioned whether the low turnout would give Kenyatta a reasonable mandate to govern.
Even if the election happened, the total will not get to 30%. He may have won, but there is no way he can be the leader of 1 million people and form a government for all people.
When
you look at the voter turnout in the strongholds, people did not even come out to vote. Where are they? It means even his own people are fed up of him.
In the central business district of the capital, Nairobi, streets remained nearly empty. Some of those who did not venture out say they want the country to get back to work.
We have to progress, not just as a country, but also as individuals. So, as a Kenyan, as a citizen of this republic, I believe that people need to go back to work.
Voting on Thursday, October the 26th, was marred by clashes between the police and stone-throwing opposition supporters, who prevented polling stations from opening in 4 pro-Odinga counties, forcing election officials to postpone the exercise by 48 hours. In all, 4 people were shot dead by the police, 3 in the pro-Odinga West city of Kisumu and 1 in the neighboring county of Homa Bay. The Election Commission says more than 1 in 10 police stations failed to open. By contrast, turnout in the August election was 80%.
In sharp contrast to the August poll, when voters queued during the night and lines snaked around buildings and down streets, most polling stations saw just a trickle of voters with a turnout of 35%. Official results from the more than 36,000 out of about 40,000 polling stations showed Uhuru Kenyatta has won well over 96% of the votes cast. Well, joining me in the studio on Africa Today, I have Oluwaseyi Adeyemo, publisher inside Watch Africa, and on Skype I have Sekou Tundi, doctorate researcher at the University of Nairobi in Kenya. Good to have you, gentlemen, on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Now, let me begin with you now, Oluwaseyi. The voter turnout, you understand, it's about 33%, down from 80% in the last vote. Now, some would say, well, this was well expected. Did it come to you as a surprise?
Yeah, as a surprise, because I thought that because we were able to get the court to nullify the last election, there will be a little more belief in the system than it is right now. Because for me, this is a show of this belief in the structure and system that is currently running in Kenya. And it's a disappointment because I thought that since the election was nullified, the people will believe more in the
Electoral system.
Yeah.
So it is a clear case of distrust,
apathy,
and we don't know what's going to happen.
Yes, we're not sure that we're not going to waste our time, because at the end of the day, I think a lot of people don't consider the fact that the people actually invest time. Yes, it is for their good, but they're going to spend time. Look at the last election. They queued all night. Now, so what do we get? I haven't spent
time.
that time. And so if you know that you're not going to get anything from a venture, it is, most likely that you don't want to spend your time in that venture.
Quite an analysis there. What's your take on this, Sekou? Do you share the same sentiments, or what's your assessment generally on the exercise so far in Kenya?
I think
All right, it seems we're having some poor visual audio quality with Sekou. We will come back with you as soon as we get that corrected. Now let's look at the issue of ethnicity in the elections. Right now, it is clear that the Luo tribe, which seems to be from the Odinga side of the divide, feel marginalized, and Kikuyu tribe, which is from which produced the Kenyatta family and all, they've been there for a long time, so they're seen to hold strong power in the economics and politics of Kenya. So, but let me ask you this now: how do you interpret the issues of ethnicity when it comes to African politics?
I think it's that card that we've played for too long, and I want to sound this, note of warning. It's going to expire very soon, because now the youth are becoming more engaging in the space of politics. They probably used to be disgruntled, and they said to themselves, we're not interested because it is full of corruption and all of that. But they're becoming to realize that whether they like it or not, whatever happened in the political space has a lot of impact on their lives. And so they're getting more into the political space, and ethnicity does not work with the youth. It is about intelligence, it's about ideology. So ethnicity is an old card, and I assure politicians that it will soon expire.
How soon do you think?
Very soon, because the truth of the matter is, if you look at the election that has happened across Africa, you will see that we are experiencing a time where we're able to vote out people out of office. That was not the tradition. It was that as long as you were incumbent, you were going to get elected into office. But right now, the youth are seeing the fact that they're not being employed, they're not being empowered, and they have more time. They have more time to spend with the internet, they have more time to research, they have more time to be more engaging. And so the truth of the matter is, in the nearest future, you'll find out that a lot of things that were working would no longer work in Africa.
All right, we have Sekou back online. I think he is much clearer now. Sekou, if you can hear me, how would you assess now the credibility of the rerun election following the dramatic moments that characterize the electoral process? All right, it seems he's off the line again, but let me come back to you now, Shi. Let's look at the impact generally, how this would affect the East African region. Kenya is known to be the powerhouse of the East African region, and this whole drama, so to speak, is said to have its own ripple effect. Absolutely. What do you think?
First of all, I'm particularly worried about the tourism industry. Kenya has been doing very well. They're coming up with a lot of great ideas, and it's unfortunate that this, like you have the report, people have said, look, we want to go back to work, we want to do a lot of stuff. But unfortunately, because politics hold a very strategic, position in our lives, people would have to spare that time, because that used to be the case. The reason why things had gone bad as it is today is because usually people are such in a hurry to go back to their normal life, and so they just want to get politics out of the way. But like I said, people have realized that politics plays a very pivotal role in our lives, and so people are willing to spare that time, sacrifice the time, so that we can get it right, at least more than we used to. So definitely is having a very bad toll, and I know the people are eager to go back to work, but I know that they are more interested in sacrificing time to make sure that things are better done than the way it used to be.
All right, you're watching Africa Today. We need to go on a very quick break. We need to we're still discussing about the political developments in Kenya following the just concluded rerun presidential election in the country. Hello, Seku, can you hear me now? Oh dear. Are we doing one-man show now?
Hello, I can hear you.
Yeah, great. I hope we'll get to have you when we come on finally on air.
Okay, okay.
All right, so stick around. We are just on a break.
Okay, thank you.
The controversy of a democratic process in Kenya is gradually plunging East Africa's largest economy into its worst political crisis for years, with about 50 people reported dead in violence since Uhuru Kenyatta was declared the winner in the August election. With the National Super Alliance transforming into a resistance movement, unfolding events remains unclear, especially in the opposition stronghold. Well, I now have back online Seku Otondi. He is a researcher, University of Nairobi. Thanks a lot for being with us again. Now, let me ask this question, which I've asked you earlier. How would you assess the credibility of the rerun election following the dramatic moments that characterize the electoral process?
Thank you so much for having me. I think if you look at the election, which was done, yesterday, the credibility of it, I think, is questionable. The reason why it's questionable is because if you look at the amount of voter turnout, it was quite low as compared to the elections, because it's about 34% coming in the fresh elections, which was held yesterday. But in the previous election, we saw a voter turnout of almost over 70% or so. So I think that undermines the credibility of the election process as well as how it was conducted across the country, given that we have seen the commissioners, like one of the commissioners, Dr. Rosalyn Akombe, and even the IBC chairman, that is Wafula Chebukati, saying that the election, he couldn't guarantee the credibility of the election. So I think compared to yesterday's election, I think the credibility is questionable.
And if we're undermining the credibility of the elections here, is it that we're going to see more of a unity style of government between the two strong men in Kenya?
I think what we might see in the coming days is more of a deepening crisis, because even despite the election being held yesterday, we've seen Mr. Odinga saying that he's not ready for dialogue yet with Mr. Kenyatta, and he already has formed, he has reshaped his party into kind of a resistance movement, which he calls for civil disobedience. So I think there's more about hardening of stance as we move into the next coming weeks after the election.
So what speculations can you make out of this, judging by the way things have unfolded?
I think what I might make out of this is, I think, first of all, I think the focus has been more so on the two main contenders, that is Mr. Odinga and Mr. Kenyatta. I mean, if you hear the discussion or the debate going around, it's more about political settlements and involving Mr. Odinga and Mr. Kenyatta, without realizing that there's other 45 million Kenyans who are also part and parcel of this particular country. So I think what should be done is maybe for this to, in the short run, what might be done is to ensure that Mr. Odinga and Mr. Kenyatta sit down, they agree on a dialogue, and they don't need to form kind of a coalition government, but to form kind of a caretaker government in such a way that there is a reform process. They reform the IEBC before calling up another election, because I don't think a caretaker government is what Kenyans actually need. I don't think a caretaker government is what Kenyans actually need, but Kenyans need to choose their own leaders on the basis of a transparent, free and fair and credible electoral process.
All right, Oluwaseyi, from what Seko is saying, it's like dialogue seems to be the only key now to resolving this, logjam, as it were, in Kenya. But what is the possibility of a unity government in this situation, especially as Odinga, right from time, said he isn't ready to, shake hands with Kenyatta?
If there's a need for them to be forced to talk, they need to talk. Because at the end of the day, like he said, it's about the people. And I think sometimes politicians think too much of themselves, that they think everything is about them. Look, the truth is they're just players. They're people who are opportune to lead us at certain times. At the end of the day, the people are more important than the 2 or 3 people who are engaged in politics. And I believe that, like happened in Gambia, we're going to have a situation where the world is going to step in. Truth is, I'm trusting that very soon structures and systems will be strengthened. We've said this over and over and over again, and until we get it right, system and structure is the way to go. We need to strengthen such that the people or individuals will become less powerful, than the system itself, so that we can have a life running. Because look, election is just part of the process. We need to live our lives, we need to do business, we need to do a lot of things, and they should not overflog or overplay this part of the whole process.
Yeah, you mentioned strengthening the system. What areas are you looking at in this case?
Political, the electoral organ, for instance, need to be strengthened. Look, at the end of the day, the process of casting vote need to be strengthened. The way it's done in the advanced world, people go to work and say, okay, I need to cast my vote. Now, some of these things, we're in an IT-driven world. You cannot continue to do the things the way we do and expect good result. Some of these things need to be done in such a way that, like, for instance, to come into this company, for instance, you guys now need to use your term, to be checked in. Now, the days of writing and doing all of those things is gone forever. Now, if you can do it in an organization like this, why can we have it done in a country? So that you need to take away the human factor in some of these processes. As long as you have human beings running or driving some things, you will never have a foolproof system.
All right, let's look at this perception of silence from the, international community, so to speak. But let's look at the AU and IGAD. Some would say that there is this perceived silence on these international bodies that should have waded in, in this situation in Kenya. Do you think that is what's happening? Or that perhaps we want to let the country test its waters by itself?
Kenya is obviously not a small country. It's a powerhouse. And the truth of the matter is, AU is also very preoccupied with a lot of things going on right now. And so they have their hands full. Now, if you're going to be treating or running after taking care of lesser powers, you would probably sometimes give the stronger power some room to play out some things. Obviously, when the chips are down, you will have AU step in and probably the rest of the world. But the truth of the matter is, it is imagined that the Kenya people are a more matured, people in terms of politics. And so I believe that what AU is doing right now is to say to them, let's see if you can work this thing out, before we step into the space.
All right, Seko, do you share the same sentiments posed by studio guest here, Oluwaseyi?
Yeah, I don't think I agree with him, but I think also if you look at the Kenyan elections, I think if you look at the international observers and also most of the African Union, even the East African community, I think they have got a stake in this particular election, because within the East Africa region, we've seen a lot of undermining of democracy. We've seen almost entirely all the countries within the East African community trying to undertake constitutional revisionism, where the leaders want to extend their term limits. So in that particular case, if we look at the EAC, as a regional bloc, and I think it has got more. It's much more easier for it to resolve this crisis. I don't think they're able to do that. The reason being, they wouldn't like to engage more in the Kenyan electoral and democratic system, because even in their own domestic back at home, I mean, countries forming the EAC, they have got challenge of these electoral autocracy in their own countries. Uganda, Tanzania, we think Tanzania recently trying to kind of form Magufuli trying to get more powers. I mean, like undermining democracy even in Tanzania and even in Rwanda and Burundi. So I don't think they're able to resolve that. And when you look at the African Union, I think the African Union, the AU summit is basically it has the power, it has got all the powers. I mean, the ultimate decision-making body of the AU. But again, if you look at the other parts of the AU, which are technical, have got technical know-how in terms of electoral management, right. They are not willing to undertake this to help the Kenyan to help Kenya, because eventually the AU summit has the final say. And we know the AU summit is dominated by African leaders, some of them who have not been elected democratically in power. So I think that's much more tricky for me. Thank you.
All right, but what's the way out of this quagmire in Kenya?
What I think is the way out, I think, is for the Supreme Court. You have got two ways this can be solved. I think either Mr. Odinga might go back to the Supreme Court and we have another round of legal battle. And then we know whether the elections will be held afresh, or maybe the Supreme Court might say that the election was credible, and then that's the end of it. The other alternative is for maybe Mr. Odinga and Mr. Kenyatta to come down and sit together and form kind of a caretaker government, or if they want a coalition government and move ahead make Kenyans move ahead with their normal lives.
All right, let's leave it at that for now. Seku Otondi, researcher, University of Nairobi, Kenya. We'd like to thank you very much for your contributions on Africa Today. Well, now, Shi, let's bring this home now. From what he said now, unity government seems to be the likely key, except we want to go back to another round of legal battles here and there in Kenya. But in a nutshell now, if you look at it holistically, where do you see Kenya moving on after these elections?
A lot of talk will happen because, like I said, the people must get on with their lives. And so whether we like it or not, whether Mr. Odinga likes it or not, or Unkro, they need to come together and talk. Because you see, at the end of the day, if we do not have a government running, the people are losing in a lot of ways. And usually when you break down and bring down a lot of things that are happening right now, because for them to have got into the sport that they've got into right now, a lot of work had gone into building the industries, the tourism industries, and a host of areas that they were doing well. And because this is happening right now, those things are coming down gradually, and there's a need for them to halt at this time and go back to their life. So I'm believing, because the truth is, when it comes to African leaders, it's really, really tough to say, for real, and say, oh, this is what is going to happen, because we're very, very unpredictable people.
And talking about unpredictability here, let's look at what is the possibility now for us to embrace this democratic principle holistically again, because this issue of African leaders not wanting to let go of power seems to be who we are. So applying this democratic style isn't who we are actually. Do you think that perhaps we might be going back to our ancestral traditional style of leadership in this case?
Like I said, and I believe that is the truth. Yes, it might be gradual. The youths are coming up. It's a state of change that is coming. It's not something that can be avoided, because, like I said, it's tied to their survival. The youth are realizing that they cannot do well as much as they want unless politics is done properly. And so the era of them staying back and holding back is dying gradually. Now we're going to have a situation where there's going to be a revolution.
Really?
Yes, you'll be surprised. Look, it has happened. For me, what happened, with Egypt and a host of them is a signal of what will happen across Africa.
But some countries are still paying dearly for it.
The point is that was the start of it, you know, and that's why there's this law. That's why there's this holdback. People are becoming strategic. Look, it is a function of survival. The truth is the youth know that if they continue to hold back, they will not get jobs, they would not be empowered, they would not get what they deserve to have. You have too many people out there hanging out and gisting and all of that. And the truth is, because they gist and go back to Twitter, to all of this facility, they're getting information, and at the end of the day, they're going to deploy that information. Leaders of Africa should be ready. Very, very, very soon, there's going to be a revolution. They'll be surprised at what will happen. That's
well, I hope to be a part, of the revolution, or rather to witness the revolution.
It's going to happen. I'm very certain.
All right, let's leave it at that for now. Oluwaseyi Adeyemo, publisher, Inside Watch Africa, we thank you very much for your analysis on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Well, in recent years, Kenya has been seen as a maturing democracy and a key Western ally in a region troubled by conflict and insurgency, but events of the past months now puts a question mark on the country's political stability. Kenya is at risk of losing much of what it has gained since 2008 unless it comes together at this crucial moment to preserve its democracy through dialogue and compromise on both sides. Well, that is our package for today. But don't forget to join the conversation as usual on Twitter at TVC News NG, and follow me for updates around Africa at Esther TVC News. Until the next one, I am Esther Mokwariola, and always remember, change starts with you.